the boy suddenly noticed a large bear lying under a tree asleep. Bold and curious, he gathered his courage and slowly approached, and even reached out to touch the bear. But the bear, awakened from its sweet dream, became furious, and the panicked Tristan immediately got up and ran for his life. He hid behind a large tree, quickly pulled out his dagger, and prepared to fight the bear, but with just a single swipe of the bear's paw, Tristan was already covered in wounds. The bear then reached out again, attempting to attack Tristan, but the brave Tristan seized the moment and drove his dagger straight through the bear's paw. The injured bear howled in pain, struggling desperately, but in the process, one of its toes was sliced off by the dagger. Immediately after, the frightened bear turned and fled in panic without looking back. At that moment, the father, having heard the bear's roar, rushed over with a gun. Seeing the injured Tristan, the father was heartbroken and scolded him for provoking the bear. But the father's friend picked up the severed toe left on the ground and repeatedly praised Tristan's bravery. Hearing the praise, the father, who had just been angry, finally showed a relieved smile. The father had once been a colonel in the U.S. Army, but after witnessing the massacre of Native Americans with his own eyes, he was filled with anger. In the end, he gave up everything and chose to live in seclusion deep in the western wilderness. However, his wife could not endure the harsh and simple life of the West, and eventually left him, taking their youngest son with her. After the mother left, the father remained in the West alone to raise Tristan and his older brother. In the blink of an eye, many years passed, and the three brothers all grew into adults. One day, the youngest brother brought his fiancée to the West to visit his father and two brothers. The father had already arrived at the station early with the eldest brother, but the moment the eldest brother saw the fiancée, he suddenly froze. At that moment, he never expected that this single glance would become a longing he could never escape for the rest of his life. The girl's name was Susanna. She had grown up without parents, and because she lacked parental care and guidance, she developed an independent and free-spirited personality. So when she saw Tristan, who arrived late from hunting and carried a bold and untamed spirit, her heart could not help but ripple. And Tristan, who had always been immersed in hunting and unfamiliar with social manners, did not know how to speak when faced with such a young and beautiful stranger. Seeing Tristan remain silent, the eldest brother directly took out a water flask and splashed water on him to wake him up. The eldest brother's action made everyone burst into laughter, and Tristan played along as if he were standing in heavy rain. After being doused with cold water, Tristan finally spoke.
I hope you, ugly here, find every happiness together.
Having lived in the bustling cities of the eastern United States for so long, Susanna was especially drawn to the openness and tranquility here. The moment she rode on horseback, she felt as if she had found her true self. She learned to shoot, she talked freely, she laughed and played with the three brothers, carefree and full of life. But Susanna did not understand why her gaze would always, intentionally or not, linger on Tristan, until one day, a little girl from a neighboring house secretly told Susanna that she wanted to marry Tristan when she grew up. Hearing this, Susanna unexpectedly felt a trace of jealousy, until the appearance of the eldest brother pulled her back to reality. Although he knew that Susanna was his future sister-in-law, the eldest brother could not help but appear before her again and again, showing his affection. The perceptive father noticed something unusual and repeatedly found ways to send the eldest brother away, preventing them from being alone together. Meanwhile, Susanna often found herself hiding by the window, secretly watching Tristan train horses for long periods of time. Thus began the tangled story of love and conflict between one woman and three brothers. The woman suddenly realized that she might have fallen in love with her fiancé's second brother, and she repeatedly warned herself not to harbor such a thought that went against moral boundaries. Yet her eyes could not help but linger on him. Just as she struggled in hesitation and inner torment, the First World War broke out, and her spirited fiancé decided to enlist and serve his country. The eldest brother also believed it was time to do his part for the nation, but their father, who deeply despised politicians and disliked the government, firmly opposed them risking their lives for those in power. The three men fell into a fierce argument, while Tristan, who had always followed his own path, sat quietly to the side without saying a word. In the end, they ignored their father's opposition and resolutely enlisted in the army. Susanna tried everything to persuade him, but her fiancé still insisted on postponing the wedding and going to war first. In despair and helplessness, Susanna could only silently turn around and walk back to her room. That night, for the first time, she walked into Tristan's room, hoping that he could help persuade her fiancé not to leave, perhaps overwhelmed by sorrow, or perhaps because emotions had reached their breaking point. Susanna burst into tears and suddenly threw her arms around Tristan. Helpless, she leaned on his shoulder and cried loudly. This embrace instantly ignited the love that Tristan had long suppressed in his heart. Just as the two were about to lose control, the eldest brother appeared in time and interrupted them. The eldest brother stood there, his face filled with shock. Without saying a word, Tristan stared back at him in silence, and Susanna hid to the side, also speechless. Afterward, none of them told anyone about what had happened, as if the scene had never existed. A few days later, with no power to stop him, Susanna could only watch her fiancé leave for the army, and Tristan, unwilling to be separated from his brothers in life or death, chose to enlist as well. Susanna held her fiancé tightly as they said goodbye, but her eyes remained fixed on Tristan. The father, who did not support their decision, finally stepped forward. He said goodbye to each of his 3 sons and watched them leave. He specifically told Tristan to take care of the youngest brother. Having experienced the cruelty of war, the father understood deeply that this farewell might become a permanent separation between life and death. After the 3 sons left, the once lively home suddenly became cold and empty. So the father and Susanna often brought food to the neighbor's house to share meals. They tried to find laughter there to fill the emptiness left by the son's departure. Meanwhile, the 3 brothers soon arrived at the brutal battlefield. As the whistle blew, they charged forward with countless soldiers across the hills. Flares lit up the sky, bullets flew in all directions, and deafening explosions echoed endlessly. One soldier after another fell, charge after charge followed by retreat after retreat, and the brutal bloodshed quickly made them realize that war was nothing like they had imagined. But even as they realized this, there was no turning back, because leaving would mean desertion, and deserters in wartime rarely met a good fate. Susanna read the letters sent from the front by her fiancé. The despair and longing described in them left her in long silence. What Susanna did not know was that the day after sending that letter, her fiancé was blinded by poison gas during a retreat. Unable to see anything, he stumbled through the forest with difficulty, and at that moment, he heard Tristan's voice. Tristan was anxiously searching through the woods for his missing younger brother. Hearing Tristan's voice, he was overjoyed and immediately ran toward the sound. Tristan also ran toward him at full speed, but unexpectedly, blinded as he was, he ran straight into barbed wire, struggling desperately but becoming more and more entangled. Even trapped, he remained full of joy, because he could hear Tristan getting closer. But what he did not know was that 2 German soldiers had taken aim nearby and fired fatal shots at him. At that very moment, Tristan arrived, quickly killed the 2 soldiers, and rushed toward his brother with a desperate cry. He pulled his brother down from the wire, and though his brother seemed to have countless words to say, he ultimately could not speak a single one. Overcome with grief and fury, Tristan tore open his brother's shirt, drew his dagger, and followed the hunting ritual taught by his Native American mentor, cutting out his brother's heart. He did this so that his brother's soul could be fully released. That night, driven by rage and a desire for revenge, Tristan infiltrated the German camp alone, killing isolated soldiers one by one. He then took their scalps with his dagger and carried them with him. This was the way of killing his Native American mentor had taught him since childhood. At dawn the next day, Tristan returned to the camp covered in the scalps of German soldiers, and everyone stared at this warrior who had avenged his brother in disbelief. But even so, Tristan could not escape the grief of losing his brother. He believed it was his responsibility that he had failed to save him. If he had acted faster, perhaps his brother would not have died. Day and night, he lived in torment, consumed by guilt and self-blame. The eldest brother, who was recovering in the hospital, often comforted and advised him. But Tristan, trapped in the abyss of guilt, still could not forgive himself. After the war ended, Tristan and his elder brother were discharged, but instead of returning home, he chose to go out to sea with his grandfather to fish, seeking peace for his soul. Only the eldest brother returned home with their younger brother's heart, and they buried it on the hillside he had loved most in life. Susanna, the fiancée of the youngest brother, also lost her hope and planned to leave and return to Boston, but a sudden heavy snowfall blocked the mountains, forcing her to stay through the winter. Throughout that winter, the eldest brother took care of her with great care and comfort. When spring arrived, Susanna came to mourn at her fiancé's grave. She had planned to leave this sorrowful place forever after paying her respects, but unexpectedly, the eldest brother finally spoke the feelings he had long hidden in his heart. He wanted to take care of Susanna in place of his younger brother and accompany her through the rest of her life. In fact, from the very first moment he saw her, he had already fallen deeply in love, but because she was his younger brother's fiancée, he had kept his feelings buried inside. He had intended to hide this love forever, but after his brother's death, the flame of his feelings only burned stronger and stronger. Faced with his sudden confession, Susanna neither refused nor accepted. As she hesitated, caught in indecision, the eldest brother took her hand, and the two of them came together. But only 2 days later, Tristan returned on horseback, and in truth, Tristan had also long harbored feelings for Susanna, and the two brothers were now destined to enter a fierce rivalry for her love. When the eldest brother saw Tristan return, his eyes filled with unease and fear. He could not help but glance at Susanna beside him, and realizing her feelings had been exposed, she quickly turned away. The father, seeing his son return after half a year, was naturally filled with joy. Although the eldest brother knew Tristan was his rival, the bond of brotherhood still brought him a trace of happiness. But what he did not expect was that very afternoon, Tristan sat before their younger brother's grave, mourning, as his failure to save him from the barbed wire remained a wound he could not heal. As Tristan cried alone in guilt, Susanna quietly walked to his side, took his hand, and pulled him into a tight embrace. She kept comforting him, and all of this was clearly seen by the eldest brother. That night at the dinner table, the eldest brother hinted repeatedly that Susanna was now his girlfriend and Tristan's future sister-in-law. Hearing this, Tristan angrily stood up and left, and Susanna quickly followed him outside. The father understood everything but remained silent, while the eldest brother sat alone in anger and despair. Seeing Susanna come after him, Tristan seized the moment, turned, and kissed her. That kiss completely swept Susanna away. After a night together, Tristan became the victor in this battle of love. The furious eldest brother never expected that after only 1 day of Tristan's return, he had already lost. He knew his chances were slim, but he never thought he would lose so quickly and so completely. The two brothers erupted into a fierce argument, and the eldest brother decided to leave home and this place of heartbreak. Before leaving, filled with sorrow and despair, he spoke sincerely to Susanna.
I do wish you both all the best.
After leaving, the eldest brother began to build a small business. With his integrity, diligence, and calm nature, he quickly established himself. His business grew larger and larger, and within just a few years, he became one of the most influential figures in the city. But success in business did not bring him true happiness. His longing for Susanna still lingered deep within his heart. Meanwhile, Tristan and Susanna lived a pastoral life that seemed almost like paradise. But Tristan was not happy, as the memory of failing to save his brother on the battlefield haunted him like a nightmare. Although everyone around him tried to comfort him, he could never forgive himself. Until one day, a calf became tangled in the ranch's barbed wire. Lying on the ground and crying out in pain, Tristan tried desperately to save it. But in the end, not only did he fail, the calf was strangled to death during his frantic attempts to free it. At that moment, Tristan's mind was in chaos, because the trapped calf was just like his younger brother on the battlefield. They struggled, they cried, they called for help, and all of it replayed again and again before his eyes. In the end, Tristan completely fell into the abyss of guilt. He often rode alone on horseback, galloping wildly while shouting into the wind. He often suffered from nightmares all night long, and he no longer dared to approach his younger brother's grave alone. In the end, unable to endure it any longer, he chose to leave home once again to search for peace, while Susanna told him she would wait for him forever. And so Tristan set out on his journey again. Ignoring his family's pleas, he found his grandfather once more and went out to sea with him, where the vast ocean brought him a trace of inner calm. Sometimes, to numb the pain inside him, he even turned to opium. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Susanna waited day and night for Tristan's return, but he did not come back, nor did he send even a single letter, until one day a year later, Susanna finally received a letter from Tristan. But in the letter, Tristan told her that their relationship was over and urged her to marry someone else. After reading the letter, Susanna locked herself in her room for an entire afternoon without saying a word. At that very moment, the eldest brother, who had left years ago after losing in love and gone into business, suddenly returned. He had intended to tell his father the good news of running for mayor, but his father, who had always despised politicians and the government, showed no joy and instead angrily criticized him. Seeing his father's attitude, he could only turn and leave in frustration, but just as he stepped out, he unexpectedly saw Susanna sitting in a chair in the hallway, lost in thought. Seeing her again, he could not help but walk over, and Susanna handed him a letter, the breakup letter written by Tristan. After reading it, although he felt sorry for her, a trace of joy still rose in his heart. He believed this was a second chance given by fate to pursue her again. He immediately reached out to wipe her tears and comfort her, but this scene was seen by the father. The father instantly scolded him loudly, warning that Susanna was his brother's wife. Angered, he immediately retorted that Tristan did not deserve Susanna. He said Tristan only cared about living freely outside and never cared about Susanna's suffering. Hearing this, the father rushed over angrily, grabbed his collar, and shouted for him to leave. But he firmly told his father that he loved Susanna, that even though she had chosen Tristan back then and so many years had passed, he still loved her, and this time he would marry her. After saying this, he handed Tristan's letter to his father and turned away. The father fell into silence as he read the letter. Years passed again, and Tristan, who had been gone without any news, finally returned, bringing many horses with him. But when he came home to find his father, he discovered that the old man had aged terribly. He had suffered a stroke, walked unsteadily, and could no longer speak. Seeing his father like this, the joy of returning home vanished from Tristan's face. He held his father tightly, tears streaming down his face. He told his father that he would never wander again and would stay by his side. The speechless father struggled to write the words "I am happy" on a board hanging from his chest. Tristan also learned from neighbors that Susanna had married his elder brother 2 years earlier, and the eldest brother was now not only successful in business but had also become a member of Congress, although he had been the one to end the relationship. Hearing this still brought a trace of sorrow to Tristan's heart. Following the address given by a neighbor, he found his brother's mansion in Helena and saw Susanna again. Seeing the sweet smile on her face, he knew she must be living a happy life. At that moment, Susanna turned and saw Tristan standing in the distance. Shock, joy, sorrow, and the weight of time all surged through her at once. Tristan intended to turn and leave, but in the end, he gathered the courage to walk toward her. He looked at her silently, just as he had the first time they met. Susanna returned the token of their past love to him. Tristan held the bracelet in his hand, paused for a few seconds, and then gave it back to her. But this time, it was no longer a symbol of love, but a blessing for her and his brother's happiness. The two lovers who once had endless words now could not say a single one. Just as Tristan was about to leave, Susanna called out to him. She hoped he would meet his brother, not wanting the once close brothers to become strangers because of her. But Tristan said it was better not to meet and that he wished him well. Then he quickly turned and left. He returned once more to his younger brother's grave, and after years of inner struggle, he finally accepted his brother's death and no longer lived in constant guilt. At this time, another person entered Tristan's life, the little neighbor girl who had once vowed to marry him. Now grown into a gentle and graceful woman, she came to find him as soon as she heard he had returned. Her presence soothed Tristan's lonely soul, and the two soon fell in love. Although Susanna had married Tristan's brother, when she heard that Tristan was going to marry, her face filled with unease. She sat before the mirror, combing her hair again and again, trying to hide her emotions from her husband. Soon it was Tristan's wedding day, but Susanna and the eldest brother did not attend. After marriage, Tristan began running an illegal liquor business to support his aging father. Time passed quickly, and before long, his son had grown and his daughter had been born. One day, on his son's birthday, the family went into town to celebrate, but unexpectedly ran into Susanna and the eldest brother. The brothers, who had not seen each other for years, finally met again. Though once close, they had not spoken for years because of past conflicts, and now they greeted each other only like ordinary acquaintances. When Susanna learned the names of Tristan's children, memories flooded back, because those names were ones she and Tristan had once chosen together. Those names were meant for their children, but fate had changed everything in a painful twist. With a loving wife and children, Tristan had believed his life would finally be peaceful and happy, but as his illegal liquor business grew, it eventually threatened John's interests. They warned Tristan to either stop or disappear, but Tristan was not someone easily intimidated. They continued to threaten him, saying he was only safe because his brother was a congressman. If he continued, they would no longer care who he was related to. Yet Tristan showed no fear and continued his business. One day, as he returned home with his family, John blocked their path. Knowing it was a provocation, Tristan stepped out to confront them, but the police suddenly opened fire into the valley to intimidate him. No one expected that a stray bullet would strike Tristan's wife. He tried to save her, but she had already died on the spot. The police, realizing their mistake, lost their earlier arrogance. Furious, Tristan rushed at the officer who had fired and beat him violently until others restrained him. John then approached and warned that if Tristan continued, such tragedies would happen again. Tristan was arrested for assaulting a police officer. The officer who killed his wife received only a minor punishment, and John faced no consequences. As Tristan was about to be released after a month, Susanna came to see him. They had once loved each other, but now she was his sister-in-law. After years of repression, Susanna finally confessed her true feelings. She said she was not saddened by his wife's death and even felt a sense of relief. She admitted she had always been jealous of Tristan's wife and had even once wished her fiancé would die in the war. All of this, she said, was because she had always loved Tristan. Hearing this, a tear fell from Tristan's eye. That tear spoke of all the love and pain between them, though separated by bars and years. They finally embraced again, but in the end, Tristan stepped back. After everything he had endured, he was no longer the man who could abandon everything for love. He told her they could not go back and that she should return to his brother. He said she would always be his sister-in-law. Hearing this, Susanna laughed helplessly, laughing at herself, at Tristan, at their love, and at fate. That night, she cried in bed until morning, and for days after, she was restless and lost. She cut off her long hair, but could not sever her feelings. In the end, she chose to end her life. After his release, Tristan and his father-in-law tracked down and killed the officer who had shot his wife. Then, after days of watching, Tristan found John alone and killed him to avenge his wife. He later received a telegram from his brother saying that Susanna had died. Her body was brought back and buried beside the youngest brother's grave. The eldest brother finally spoke the truth he had hidden for years. He said he had given his whole heart to Susanna, but knew he could never replace Tristan in her heart. He said he missed the days when they first met her, when everything was carefree. That night, Tristan took out a photograph of the three brothers, taken by Susanna. They looked so young and happy, as if it were yesterday, but time had quietly changed everything, and none of it could ever return. The song had ended and the people were gone, yet the sky outside remained as blue as the day he first met Susanna. She stood under an umbrella, smiling sweetly as she greeted him, and he stood there, silent, looking at her forever.